Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to talk about the process of completing the square, just to review it with you. And I'm going to do example number 2. This is from the Lesson Master packet that you took home over the weekend. I want you to know that completing the square should work for any problem on this page. However, with what we've done so far this year, we've only talked about completing the square when there's no leading coefficient. And that again means when there's no number in front of x squared, when that's just a 1. Okay, so for our purposes right now, completing the square only works on something like number 2, number 3, number 6. Any of those you could do with completing the square. Okay, if it has a number in front, something like number 4, for example, I would use the other method we talked about with h and k. H and k would also work on 2, 3, and 6, so either one of those methods is fine. There is one problem on your test where you are required to use completing the square. Otherwise, I don't care which method you go with. So h and k always works. Completing the square right now only works on these kind, but that's not, eventually you're going to learn how to do it with other numbers there. So, okay, let's talk about this problem number 2, and let's get rid of my face because we don't need to see that. There we go. Okay, so number 2. To do completing the square, we would love this to be a perfect square trinomial, meaning something where this number and this number have like a common factor, okay? Now, in this case, we don't have that. So what I'm going to do is I want to replace this 10 with a different number. So I'm going to move that 10 out of the way. I'm going to move it to the other side, and I'm going to write this as y minus 10 equals x squared minus 6x. Okay? But I really want another number over here, and I know this is a little hard to see. I wish I had a little more space. I really want another number over here that would make it so I could make this into a perfect square trinomial. And the way you get that other number, here, you know what, I might turn this sideways. It says y minus 10 equals x squared minus 6x, and then again I'm looking for some magic number here that would allow me to write this as like x minus something squared. And the way I get that magic number is I take this negative 6 and I cut it in half, and I get negative 3. Okay, that's that factor that the two numbers need to have in common. And we'll talk about what we're going to do with that negative 3 in just a minute, but that negative 3 is important. Then to figure out what goes here, I'm going to take that negative 3 and square it. Okay. Now, if you're going to square negative 3 in your calculator, it does need to be in parentheses. Really, though, as a rule of thumb, this number is always going to come out to be positive because you're squaring something, and squared numbers always come out positive. So negative 3 squared is equal to 9. So I'm going to put a 9 there. But I'm not allowed to just randomly add a 9 to my problem. I also need to add that 9 over here on the left side. Okay, so I added 9 here, and I added 9 here, and all is good in the land of equations. Okay, so now this side here on the left, negative 10 plus 9 is negative 1. So this now says y minus 1 equals, and this side, I want to take it and write it as x minus something squared, so that when I FOIL it back out, it comes out to be this. Okay? Well, the way we get from this number to these numbers is whatever goes here, I double it to get this number, and I square it to get that number. Like when I FOIL it, that's what happens there, is I take this number and double it, I take this number and square it. And that's why we did this process, is so that that would be the same number for both of them. And that magic number is this negative 3. Negative 3 times 2 gives me negative 6, and negative 3 squared gives me 9. Okay, so the number that's going to go here, now I already put the negative there, so really this is just a 3, but that's how I know that this is a minus 3 and not a plus 3, is that this was a negative. So x minus 3 because that's a negative 3. And so then my vertex form is y minus 1 equals x minus 3 squared. Okay, So that's the process of completing the square. Move this number out of the way, cut this number in half, square it, and add it over here, and then add that same number to the left side, okay? And then factor what's left over here on the right, meaning figure out how could you write it in parentheses. How could you write it as x minus something or x plus something squared? And the rule of thumb for that is it's always the number you got when you cut it in half, but before you squared it, okay? So that's the process of completing the square.